Welcome, everyone. I'm Sally Hurley with VIP Desk, and I'm joined with my co-host here, Jeff Cramp. Welcome, Jeff.
Good morning, Sally. Good morning, everyone.
We're going to get started here in just a few minutes, probably 4 minutes. We're going to be talking about a bill that's making its way through Congress, and it impacts our industry. So we always like to share things that are related to customer experience, all things CX and AI. So this is going to be interesting, maybe a little bit more detail oriented than some of the more fun ones, but I think it's an interesting bill. It has a lot of potential impact.
Yeah, absolutely.
Welcome, everyone. We're going to get started here in just a few minutes, 3 minutes to be exact. Welcome, everyone. Hi, I'm Sally Hurley. I'm the CEO here at VIP Desk. I'm joined with our Chief AI Officer, Jeff Cramp. Thanks for joining me, Jeff.
Thanks for having me. Thanks, everyone. We'll look forward to the conversation today.
It's great. Thanks for joining. We always like to talk about all things CX, customer experience, and AI related. So this is a big one, this bill that is making its way through Congress. We're going to dig into it and what it means. If you've joined us a couple minutes early and you'd like to post questions for us, please don't hesitate to do that. At the end, we'll share our contact information. Happy to contact and connect with you and chat.
Okay, 1 minute out.
All right. Going to get started here in just less than a minute. All right, going to get started here soon. Thanks, everyone, for joining. We're going to jump into this webinar in just a few seconds. Okay, it's 11 a.m. Eastern Time. Welcome, everyone. I'm Sally Hurley. I'm the CEO at VIP Desk. I've joined today with Jeff Cramp, our Chief AI Officer. Welcome, Jeff.
Thank you, Sally. Good to be here. Looking forward to the conversation yet again.
Yeah, this is going to be interesting. We are going to be talking about the Keep Call Centers in America Act and what that means. It's making its way through Congress. So we're going to jump into it. Why are we here today? What are we going to cover? We're going to tell you a little bit about our experience later on in this presentation today in this webinar. We are a BPO located outside of DC, so we're uniquely positioned to have access to hearing details about this bill and hopefully meeting with our senators and representatives. So we're going to talk about the bill, highlight some key components and details, what it could mean for our industry and customer service operations, what that shift could look like if onshoring is impacted in terms of cost and compliance, and what you can do today. So as we look at the bill, this is an interesting bill that has a bit of a history. It was introduced by two senators, Senator Ruben Gallo and Jim Justice from Arizona and West Virginia. And they introduced it to the Senate committee. Sorry, I just want to make sure I share the right one. The Senate Commerce, Science, and Transportation Committee on July 29th. And then the representatives, Kristen McDonald Rivet and Brian Fitzpatrick, they introduced a similar bill to the House on August 12th. So the history of this that I think is interesting is a bill just like this has been presented back in 2011 and 2017. And obviously they didn't pass, but the context now, this is new. And we're going to dig into it and what does it mean if it goes through. Just to share the process, in case you're wondering, like, what is our process? So it was introduced to the committee. The committee will meet, review, debate, mark it up. It'll move to the Senate floor for a vote. If it passes there, it also needs to go through the same process in the House. And then they come together in some kind of reconciliation with a final vote. If it clears there, it goes to the president to sign and become law. So how long does this take? It could take months. It could take a year. Many of these types of things die in the committee process. So we know that that's the case, but we thought it's pretty dramatic. We thought it's worth digging into it today. So we're going to share with you the details as it stands right now. So who is impacted? Basically, it's any business that has an in-house, outsourced, offshore team for customer service. So whether you do it yourself and you have team members that are nearshore or offshore in different countries, you would be impacted. If you outsource to a BPO that has team members outside of the US, you would be impacted there as well. And it's every industry: banks, airlines, retailers, travel, e-commerce, you name it. And the idea behind the bill is to bring jobs back to the US. To put it in context, in the Philippines alone, there are 1.8 million jobs that handle customer service today. So our presentation today is going to be focusing on the impact on our side in terms of US businesses, and or if you run your own call center or you outsource from the US perspective. A couple of definitions in the bill talks about a business entity, any organization, corporation, trust, partnership, blah, 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 established to make a profit by purposefully availing itself of the privilege of conducting commerce in the US. So the interesting part about that, if you're a nonprofit, so far you're not included. That's how I interpret that. And it applies if you have 50 or more employees working 1,500 hours a week. So it says it doesn't apply to part-time, but 1,500 puts it our, US 30 hours is considered full-time. So that's kind of the baseline in terms of the number of employees. And then you may be wondering what kind of work they would be doing. What is the call center definition? And it is an operation in which employees, whether they work in a facility offshore, nearshore, or they work at home, it doesn't matter if they're receiving incoming telephone calls, emails, or other electronic communication for the purpose of providing customer assistance or other services. So other services is interesting. So here's some of the highlights. We got 2 slides just to give you, and then we'll talk about this a little bit more. But just want to give you kind of the highlights of the bill itself. So employers who contract out offshore 30% or greater of the call center work must notify the Department of Labor within 120 days if they intend to do it, or 120 days, once this bill passes. I'll talk about that, I think, later in the presentation. There will be a registry of all the companies that are on this list. If you have an operation, whether you use a BPO in the program team members are offshore, nearshore, or you have your own offshore, nearshore staffing. And then the reporting requirements, regardless, we will all need to report to the Department of Labor within a year our structure, meaning how many people do we have in the U.S. and how many people are offshoring, and frankly, what kind of jobs are lost due to either offshoring or AI. And we're going to talk about that too. In terms of the consumer transparency, there is, Jeff, did you want to jump in here?
Yeah, absolutely. So agents must disclose where they're, what country they're coming from, right? So if you're talking to somebody, and you've seen some customer service agents do this before, they might say it by state, but it's going to become required that you have to identify them by country. AI bots, and this is something like we're always big on transparency here. They must disclose that they are AI and that they are a bot. Some people kind of go on the model of like, let's just pretend it's human. That is not allowed. One of the big trends throughout this bill is transparency. So be upfront about that. And from a routing perspective, customers can say, let's say they are routed to a team or AI. They have to have the option to route immediately to connect to a US-based human. So that is a big impact, right? So you have to make sure you have the ability to do that, that you've got the staff to be able to handle that. And so forth. And now you're exempt if you're sort of have everybody already in the US, so then you don't need to worry about that. And if you're servicing emergency services, of course, that's exempt from that.
And I think it's important to share that if let's say you're Dick's Sporting Goods, they're not our client, but if you are Dick's Sporting Goods and you outsource to a BPO that has, let's say, thousands of customer service agents in 15 countries, but your team and your program is in the US, you're fine. You would not be in this scenario, Dick's Sporting Goods would not be penalized. Still have to do the reporting, like everybody will now have to do that, but they won't be penalized. And we're going to talk about that next.
Yeah, I think the key point there is, your team has to be a dedicated team in the US. Like you have to have that as an option. So you as a company, that is the requirement you must pass on to your BPO, and they'll hopefully be making you aware of that as well.
Now, if the BPO has 30% of their staffing offshore, they will face penalties, and who knows if they pass those expenses on. So
right.
Just a consideration. So the bill highlights from a federal oversight and penalties. So, one might think, oh, we don't have federal contracts, it doesn't apply to us, but it's more than that. Business loans, 70% of business loans in this country are guaranteed by the government, and that falls under this bill. So you would be ineligible to receive any federal grants or loans that are guaranteed by the federal government. Once you get on that list, then, the shame list, for 5 years, you would not be able to get these types of loans or grants. And then even worse, you could have those canceled. And then there's clawbacks for grants. So that's pretty dramatic. In terms of the federal contracting itself, obviously, it outlines that for federal contracts, the employees need to be in the US, in US-based call centers, virtual or in a center. And then there's a monthly, if you don't, there's a monthly penalty that has to do with these loans and grants of equal up to 8.3% of those loans or grants. And then on the other side, on the civil penalty side, there's a couple of things. If you're not registered within 120 days of deciding to set up an operation offshore, or if you already are, then there are penalties not to exceed, it says not to exceed 10 grand each day of the violation. So, not to exceed, but if it is 10 grand, that's significant. The other thing that everyone needs to do, other than the reporting, is you must certify to the Federal Trade Commission whether you comply with this new law or not, should it go through. So those are kind of the highlights of the bill itself as it stands today.
Yeah, and as far as so this disclosure part, we touched on this a little bit. Basically, your CX transparency becomes law, and so we've always felt that that's the best practice, but now you'll have no choice. And so, like we said, every agent must include their location, and bots must be identified, especially AI. They cannot pretend. They can give them names still, but you can't pretend like it's like a human. And so this is all best practice. This is good stuff. As far as your operational challenges, you need to be able to detect your agent location. So, especially if you've got a remote force, especially if you're diversified over the globe, like who's offshore, who's onshore, and route accordingly. So, again, especially with those escalations, because that's going to be required. So, what's your transfer protocol? Defining all of that, which you probably have right now with the classic "I want to talk to a manager" kind of escalation. But this is really just like I just want to talk to someone in America. So, that is a big part of that. And so you're looking at those whole operational procedures. And this is for all channels, right? So chat, voice, messaging, social, digital, and voice. It's covering everything where that sort of falls under scope of this bill. And like we said, like what's that process look like, or when someone wants to talk to someone in the US, like what's your queue messaging, what's your escalation from there? So they go to a human and they want to still talk to a manager. So mapping that all out. So that's going to be a big operational overall. And then AI impact. This is one of those things that is actually not bad. And we think it's a good thing, right? So disclosure doesn't kill AI, but it forces you to think about it smartly, right? So you have to use it ethically. You have to make sure you're thoughtful with that implementation. And because it's going to be right out there, right? This is our AI bot. This is our AI automation. And even if you have like the best of the best right now and you're getting an amazing automation rate, you still need to escalate it, right? And so what is that process like? Do you have the humans to handle that staffing? And of course, are they in the US?
You know what's interesting that's not defined in the bill is it says you must, whether it's AI or people, offshore agents, human agents, you have to give them the option to get to a US based human agent. It doesn't say the hours. So that's interesting. Okay, your human agents are available, during these limited hours. There's just some gaps in it. And I just think that that's interesting.
Yeah, I foresee, because most automation like runs 24/7, right? We're seeing incredible like you don't want to lose those gains after hours. And so I suspect what will happen is after hours is after hours. Like most people will create like in their CRM an offline ticket that gets worked by a person as if it was an email or web form. It's the on hours, and I think it's going to be your hours of operation. So it can't be like, oh, we're running like 10 till 10 for our hours of operation, but our US staff is only here from 9 to 5. I think it's be your hours of operation, just because people will work that to their advantage. Now, maybe not. Again, it's vague, but I would go into this on the assumption that it's everything, because you don't want to be caught off guard and then have to pivot.
Right. Okay, so the cost, there's a significant impact in terms of cost. I mean, we're going to talk about our story here in a second, but the idea of shifting offshore agents from all over, from Mexico, from Jamaica and the Caribbean and South Africa and the Philippines and India, like so many places where the cost is at least half, if not more. I mean, you hear and you'll read articles about how if you offshore your staffing, you'll save about 25%. That is way off. It is at least double that, and it's significant. So if you flip it back the other way, there will definitely be a cost impact. And so, could be 2 to 3 times the cost if you don't implement AI. If you just take your staffing, let's say you're pure staffing offshore, you take it onshore, that'll be a significant change in terms of the cost impact.
Yeah, absolutely. And then I think one of the things that you're going to see is we're already seeing rapid deployment right now of AI. Like it's catching on. People are still resisting a little bit, but if you look at the adoption curve, it's huge. This is going to go and sort of give it a massive shove in that direction that it's already going. And when you do the math, like when Sally's talking about the numbers here, like if you have a well implemented AI, like within the first 30 days, you're probably hitting about 30%. At least that's what we're seeing. It all comes down to your knowledge and your resources. But then, yeah, within a year, you're looking at 60% plus. We're seeing clients with 80% plus if you've got all of your information and knowledge already got gathered together. So that's a tremendous offset of that cost, and with no sacrifice of service. So we have many webinars here talking about our experience with AI and how it's just a great option for you right now for great customer service. But when you throw in like doubling your costs, that's kind of a no-brainer. And so we've got some numbers here, but you basically, if you went conservative and said, okay, let's say we can only automate 50% of our sort of requests that are coming in, that's still a tremendous savings. So it really just does offset this push, and it just accelerates something that's really accelerating already. And so because of that adoption growth, you're going to see people go in this direction no matter what.
Right. And even if you automate 80%, which we're seeing in one of our programs, under this bill, you still need humans. It still requires the ability to escalate to a human in the US. So, but it certainly, it would certainly help, handle the routine transactional inquiries that are, won't cause customer frustration, and then hand off the more intricate, complicated interactions to US based customer service professionals.
Right. And I think like if you look at, like, for your example here, you've got 1,000 agents. If you did automate 80% of that, you're down to 200 agents. Like maybe the smart move is also just moving fully to the US instead of dealing with complex routing, making sure you have staffing 2 centers or 2 like different teams. And then your customers don't have to be sort of bounced around from one person to another. So really, I think doing the math is really important there, and taking a look at your AI readiness. And just projecting that out and saying, okay, what's the best strategy for us?
And obviously, if you're a global brand and you have customers in other countries, it doesn't apply. This is just applying to US citizens calling businesses in the US, or that are for US services that are transacting in the US. So if you're a US citizen and you want to call, BMW in Germany, or you are not going to be, they can handle their calls wherever they are based. That's actually outlined in the bill as well, which seems like common sense.
Awesome. So yeah, like basically, and it's funny, we've been talking about a coming shift in all of our series here, strictly around AI, because it is such a massive impact to the industry and just to the world in general. But this one is sort of layering on that, right? And so you've got that mandated transparency. You're going to have to, I don't know how people could not take advantage of the AI technology out here, just in general, because it's so darn good. But really, it's the only way to make the math work. And so it's a perfect timing of this type of thing, because if this didn't exist, like I don't know what companies would do. And then, your humans, like really, you want your people to handle that more complex work, because it gives the customer a better experience. You get to upskill your people. It's more interesting for them on the calls because each interaction is different. And so that is a win. And then, like we said, the federal contacts, that's fully onshore. And we feel like the AI adoption is going to be huge for anybody who has service right now in the US.
So, I mentioned at the beginning we'd share our story. We picked our path, 10 years ago, and really have doubled down on having team members in the US, primarily driven by the clients we serve. So higher touch, more complex interactions, expectation of elevated service. And what we've seen going through, RFPs as a BPO is just a massive shift to offshoring, primarily for cost saving. So it's one of the reasons, we have a fabulous couple of partners offshore and in Europe, and they do a phenomenal job. But we ourselves, our core capability, we made this decision. And now with AI, we feel like and we think it's tied to this bill, meaning if you can automate the simple kind of interactions and it's not frustrating, and then reduce your costs that way, and then escalate to humans when necessary and when customers want that, that seems to make sense to us. And we've seen that play out quite successfully. So at least there's AI to the rescue in this situation. And I think the days of, when you would call customer, maybe they aren't over. You would call some customer service offshore and it would just not make people happy because they would know it's offshore. So transparency is a big part of this. And that's interesting because a lot of offshore call centers use AI with humans to mask the accents and have a American accent, but they're still offshore, so they would still that would still not solve this issue. It still falls under this bill. But for us, just maybe Jeff, you want to talk about the proof we've seen in how you can actually balance cost savings with high quality of service in the US. And I think that maybe are we the last provider focused on the US?
Well, I think too, yeah, like we've seen it. So from the AI perspective, and if you're here for the first time and because of you're interested in this, what's going on with this bill, take a look at we go in depth heavily into our experience with AI and whatnot. But yeah, we're seeing 50% of contacts automated within 90 days, easy. We've got clients that have 80+% after about a year of working with them, working with their knowledge and really tweaking that process. So that's very achievable. And then the thing we haven't really touched on here, but just in case you're concerned, and we do talk about it with our other webinars, and we'll post a link. Our CSAT scores held steady during implementation, which sometimes you do see a dip as you're sort of figuring things out. And then they've increased. And it's just been an amazing experience. Our clients are very happy. We've got some white papers on our website if you want to explore that. But there's no real risk here. And I think people approach new technologies as like, oh, I don't know. I want to wait and see what's happening. Yeah, this train has left the station and it's barreling down the tracks. And so it's really phenomenal of what it can do. And so, like Sally said, it's to the rescue because that's the only way that this is going to work.
And we're talking about agentic AI, not the old, what would you call them, chat bots or bad
right
AI, IVRs, like not that stuff. But
yeah, and that's the challenge. And I think again, if you're new here, we've gone into this how everything has AI. My cup of coffee's got AI. Everything's AI. But it's there's certain, and they've always had things like natural language understanding and processing and so forth. But yeah, we went into this last year with the generative AI, which is an amazing way to get conversational like transactions happening with your customers, and it just sounds amazing. And then the push to agentic AI, where not only is it just sort of communicating your knowledge and your policies and your procedures and all of that, it's able to go out and do things on behalf, just like your agents do, and get information and then relay it back to the customer or handle more complex requests from customers. Like that's really where you're seeing this big push. And so I think if you have a preconceived notion and you haven't really played around with some of this stuff, definitely time to to take another look, because it is changed drastically and the capabilities are incredible.
Thanks for that, Jeff. Okay, so as we come to a conclusion here, we'll give you some additional considerations to think about, some other pieces of the bill. One of them is, we mentioned it only impacts if you have 30% of your total volume. It's like measured over the average of 12 months. But interestingly, that references call volume. So who knows? I'm assuming that means all volume. I didn't see anything in there that would impact back office functions, like all of the functions that come into play for running a customer service center, QA, workforce management, tech, trainers. Basically, it doesn't look like it affects any non-customer facing functions. So that's maybe good news if you have those offshore. Again, I mentioned earlier, only impacts US customers, doesn't impact businesses outsourcing to a BPO with US agents for their program. Regardless of that, I mean, you're super safe if they're an only US provider. You should be safe if you have a dedicated team. Like most of our programs have dedicated teams, and most of our programs, right? We are US, but anyway, you should be fine. That's that Dick's Sporting Goods scenario that I shared earlier. I think countries, we don't really talk about the impact on the other side, but they will definitely look to diversify their services as well. That would be a massive hit. I remember hearing a YouTube from a woman who said there are 60,000 jobs in Jamaica alone for customer service. So there's a lot of Belize, there's lots of countries with people that would be potentially impacted as well on the other side. US businesses, we talked about this, they haven't already moved to implement AI, and we're not talking about agent assist. Move to real AI that actually solves the customer interactions and do that. Jump off a cliff already. It's good. If you have a good platform to do it and you have amazing content, you need content for that, meaning policies, procedures, you have to train it. But that, we think, if it's not on the table, it should be. And again, if it passes, could take a year to go through this process, and then a year, it would be a requirement a year from whenever it's put into, we call it enactment. So with that, we'll hop to Jeff. Maybe you take what they could do now. Now what?
Yeah. So even though we're looking at a year, maybe 2 years out, and this is a good exercise just to do, especially with a lot of the automation tools that are out there now. But the first thing you should do specifically to this bill is, what is the impact of your CX? So if you're offshoring right now, you're working with a BPO that's offshoring, what would it cost you? And I think just plain, like, not changing anything else other than migrating to the US. What does that look like? And I think that'll give you a really good baseline to know where you stand, what the impact is, what's your strategy going to be. And then if you're going to stay offshore, what's your escalation plan? Because that is required. So, like, how do you have to acquire those humans if you don't already have them? And what does that look like from your switch perspective, your routing and chat, your social, all of those type of things? Do you have that ability to? And then does your workforce have the ability to forecast and map all that out, basically handling an increase in escalations? So that is going to be, you're going to see quite a bit more escalations than you would say with just like, can I talk to your manager kind of thing. The remaining points, I think you should be doing right now anyway, even if you're not worried about this bill or it doesn't affect you. So your technology readiness. So first and foremost, AI always needs to have good information. You need an AI solution. You need to have a strategy around that. And what's your bot going to do? What's it going to say? What do you have to say? Maybe within your compliance of your organization. And the operational readiness. Do you have that documentation? Do you have training materials, your policy and procedures? Like, do you have a lot of institutional knowledge? Maybe you've got a team that's been with you for 20 years and they just know everything, but is that written down? And you really need to make sure that it's laid out and structured in a way that, like, if you had to hire a new team, they could be up and running in no time. But more importantly, if you had to roll out a sort of generative AI and agentic solution, do you have that knowledge ready for it to consume? Do you have those tools ready so you can take advantage of some of this agentic functionality? That is huge. And now if that all looks good, then maybe it's time to be bold and adopt it now. And so you can dip your toe in the water. You should always be thoughtful about that. But now that you're sort of mapping this path, like, what are your routine inquiries? If you're not breaking down your contacts right now, you should probably be doing that. What are the reasons for contact? What are the issues people are having? And what are the sort of the biggest impacts that you could do right out of the gate that will lead to better customer service, but also those higher automation rates and resolution rates, and all of that without harming your overall customer experience, your CSAT, your NPS, all of that. So I think, like, if take a look at what's out there. It's pretty impressive. We'd be happy to talk to you about it, but I would say now is the time to be bold. Everybody else is jumping on the bandwagon of this, and then this law, it's just going to be a scramble. So I think that's really important. And then that brings us to strategic partnerships. So talking to, if you are not doing it in-house, or if you are and you're getting worried and you want to look to do an outsourcer, find a BPO partner that is US based, that is already talking about this bill, and somebody with an AI proven solution, because this stuff is moving so fast and you really have to have a good partnership, because it's a lot to take on in-house, and you want to make sure that you are always forward facing, that you are able to handle this and help address your costs. And at the end of the day, this could end up saving you money, which is kind of incredible.
Yeah. Wow. Well, it's a huge potential impact right at the same time when AI is moving. So it's complex. Right. It has a long way to go. So what we like to do is we're going to post a survey on LinkedIn here in a little bit. And if you follow us, we'd love to ask you to complete the survey if you outsource or if you have your own contact center, either one, because we'd like to collect as a community that feedback and be able to share it with our representatives in Congress, because we're here. Why not be involved and share what the community is saying about this? And Jeff said it, if you wanted to chat with the two of us, we'd be happy to connect with you. There's so much we have to share about our experience implementing AI and how it can be done well to help offset those costs and still preserve, amazing high touch customer service with people too. And then of course we'll monitor this bill, and as we hear updates, they came back into session this week, and so we'll keep tabs on the progress of this and post in LinkedIn as we hear them. Any final thoughts from you, Jeff?
No, I'm going to start sounding like a broken record, but I think that if you again, dive into AI, if you do it personally, if you're not doing that already, talk to your provider, reach out to us. Again, we're no pressure. We're happy to have the conversation and give you sort of our lessons learned. But it's pretty incredible. And our bread and butter is sort of that high touch, high level customer experience journey. And the fact that we're sort of all in on this, I think, should be a good indicator that it's up to standard. So I think this is just yet another push. And I think you should, just as an exercise, map out the impacts of that. But maybe this is your catalyst to start having that internal discussion with leadership about your use of AI and how you can expand that.
Awesome. Well, thank you all for joining us. It's interesting. It's a pretty dramatic bill, but we wanted to, since it impacts all of us, we thought it's important to share it in case this goes through. It's a big deal. So Hopefully you found this helpful. We'll keep you posted. And we thank you for joining us. Thank you, Jeff, so much for being my partner in crime in our webinars. So thank you as well.
My pleasure to be here. Thanks, everyone. And I think this is great. I just saw someone asking about the case study. It is available on our website. So just go ahead and grab that. I think you'll find it an interesting read. But thanks, everyone, for listening. It's always a pleasure to talk about this stuff. And we'll see you next time.
Awesome. Thanks, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Bye.